Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. My guest today is Dr. Colleen Leigh, Assistant Dean of Enrollment Management and Student Success at the Craig Newman Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY. Colleen leads an integrated team across admissions, student affairs, career services, and alumni affairs. And frankly, CUNY Craig Mark Graduate School of Journalism is a different beast in that it's relatively small, it's graduate students only. However, having said that, what they've done in integrating their admissions, their student services, their career services, and alumni services is a model for any college or university, regardless what their size is. Colleen's work is grounded in the belief that every student deserves a chance to thrive, and she joins me today to talk about the CUNY School of Journalism, how they've broken down the silos and built a student-centered culture where people feel seen, supported, and empowered, and more than fills their enrollment pipeline. Colleen, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Drumm. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. Gosh, you have got a really interesting role there at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the College of New York. You lead an integrated team across admissions, student affairs, career services, and alumni affairs. Basically, it's looking at the full spectrum of the student life cycle. Very unusual. Now, your college is small, and that's typical, but still being able to see it the full life cycle is amazing. Before we get into all those details, though, please give us some of your background. I'm excited to hear more about who you are and how you came into this.
Sure. Yes. Thank you again for having me. So I have been in higher ed for it's almost exactly 20 years. I started my career at the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia, and I was their admissions and diversity representative. And so that kind of introduced me to the world of recruiting and admissions. I did do a little bit of admissions in my undergrad, helping to recruit students of color to campus. I was the president of our multicultural organization there. But that was not initially my path in higher ed. After Savannah, I ended up moving back to where I'm from, New Jersey, and working for the school that I'm working at now, the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY, the City University of New York. So I've been at that school for about 18 years. But before I even got into higher education, I actually was a journalist. So I was a freelance TV reporter for a Filipino TV station in New Jersey. I am half Filipino, and there's a large population of Filipinos in the Northeast, but especially in New York and New Jersey. And so that's really where my career started. It was in journalism. And then I ended up just kind of moving into higher education and have stayed in it ever since for about 20 years. So really happy to be in higher education.
Well, it's always an interesting path. When I talk to my guests, it is very interesting for me. There's so many divergent ways people come into higher ed, some of them directly out of college, university, but others like yourself, journalism. For me, it was very different, Navy, consulting, etc. To me, it adds to the richness of what we can bring to our students to see there's more than one way to get into a job market.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of my colleagues who come also from different backgrounds, and somehow we all now have been in higher education. But I know more recently, a lot more schools have this as a path. Like one of my master's degrees is actually in higher education administration, and I see a lot more schools that start to offer it. And so I feel like now students kind of going into their careers after graduation are actually selecting this as a path versus kind of falling into it somehow or other, which is exciting.
It is exciting because I look at one of our jobs is to help transform that younger generation. And for them to be able to see there's all different paths that we can go on, to me is really, really important.
Yes, I definitely agree. And having a different background, coming from a new background outside of higher ed is also really important because it gives you a different perspective when you're speaking with students.
Mm-hmm. And now you deal primarily with graduate students. there at CUNY. And I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier when I gave the definition of CUNY. So apologies to the listener. That's my own ignorance. We're seeing all sorts of challenges in higher ed, undergraduate, the enrollment cliff, graduate programs with student loans. With all of them, there is a huge component for mental health because programs are very intense. What are you seeing with your current graduate students?
Yes, mental health is a real, I wouldn't say crisis right now, but we're seeing a lot more students that are coming in with mental health issues or a lot more stress personally that then translates into their professional or student life. And so, especially as graduate students, our program actually is full-time only. So we don't even have a part-time option.
Really?
And we are in New York City. Yeah. So
Wow.
we're right in Times Square, and New York City can be very expensive. So on top of your full-time program and the expense of living in New York, especially if students are new to New York City, just that's overwhelming in and of itself. And so we've,
Yes.
yeah, definitely. If you're not from there, it can be a lot just to take in while also starting at a graduate program.
Mm-hmm.
We have a wonderful student affairs office that does a lot of wellness programming. We also work with a lot of different CUNY schools to learn about what other graduate schools are doing. And of course, we are a journalism school. And so that's also another stress because it's not like you just go home and work on a paper or study for an exam. They are out in the streets reporting when other people might be home. So if during COVID, our students were reporting, they were out in the streets and, going to hospitals and going to different places. If there's a weather situation going on, they're out there covering it. And so that adds another layer of stress on top of all the other things that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to get more into the challenges in just a little bit, but from my listeners' perspective, I wanted to go into how CUNY journalism structure is. It's unusual because it's a small school. You've got different divisions within there. How's the school structured? Because I think that makes a big influence on how you're able to look at the full student life cycle.
Yeah, definitely. So we are a small school. We only enroll about 110 to 120 students every fall. We're only a year and a half program. So students start in August and they graduate the following year in December. So at most, we have anywhere from 220 to 240 students on campus in the fall. And we are only 2 floors of a building. So it might sound like, oh, that's so small, but we're only 2 floors in a building in Times Square. So it does get really packed in the fall, which is great. We have a lot of activity going on at the school. And so, as you mentioned, my position oversees admissions, the director of admissions, a director of our student affairs office, director of career services, and the director of alumni affairs. So I'm kind of the person that oversees the entire student experience from recruitment all the way to when you graduate. And I'm making sure that that's a seamless experience. And we also have an operations department who's also an assistant dean. And that person oversees our facilities, our public safety, is kind of our HR liaison because we do have some shared services at another CUNY school. And they also oversee our academic operations.
Mm-hmm. So you've got operations, you've got academic affairs, and you've got your stuff as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that integrated team, how do you take input that informs recruiting for your next class? Because you have an opportunity with what alumni are telling you, things like that, what they need.
Correct. Yeah. Because I oversee all the student facing departments and I work very closely with each director, it's really an entire school operation in terms of recruitment. We do utilize our current students, we utilize our alumni, and also our faculty and our staff are really involved. So we actually have some staff in a couple weeks going to a conference on behalf of admissions because it's a more of a focused on a broadcast conference. And we actually have our equipment room who do a lot of in the classroom work with our students that are attending that and actually bringing a lot of equipment and showcasing that. Like you mentioned about getting input from alums, we do have a really great alumni board and we communicate with them regularly. And so they are the voice for our alums. And so they will tell us, some places that maybe we should go recruit from, or if we have new alumni ambassadors that want to get involved with recruiting or doing some kind of work with admissions, maybe interviewing applicants or things like that, reviewing applications. And then, of course, we have our faculty that are always informing, other places that we should recruit. Sometimes they go with us to recruit at various conferences. So it really is an entire school recruitment operation going on campus.
So in essence, your position is essentially a Chief Enrollment Management Officer, a CMO.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's a term that is coming up more and more within higher education because higher ed, with the enrollment cliff coming up, with all of the challenges that we've got going on in higher education, we've got to look at the student experience holistically. It can't be like one vice president of admissions told me a while back, my job is just to recruit him in. I don't have anything to do with him after that. That doesn't work anymore.
No, it definitely doesn't work. And it's funny that you say that because when I was working at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, I was solely a recruiter. There was a totally different admissions counseling, advising, all that. Once I got the application, I was on to the next student. And so that's one reason why I ended up wanting to move on to a different institution, because I really wanted to see the entire way through. I wanted to, those students that I recruited who applied, do they actually come? How do they do when they are in the school? And how are they as an alum and as a graduate? So it's been really great to kind of see that through the entire experience.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, how does that experience work? Because as I'm thinking about it, you're responsible for recruiting the students. And you've already said you've got faculty, you've got people going out to different conferences, things like that. Once you've got them in the door, you've got to be able to take care of them and dealing with all the challenges that a full-time student does, especially Times Square. I mean, first time I went to New York City, I was completely overwhelmed. And I can just imagine somebody coming from a small rural area to New York City for what is a fabulous program. It's like, how do I deal with all this stimuli? Then you've got to be able to help them find jobs, career services, and then help them as alumni and from a networking. So how does that all work together?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really great. This position only started, I want to say, in 2019. So we didn't have this position beforehand. And so our previous dean really thought this would help streamline a lot of the student-facing departments and help kind of with collaboration and things like that. And so, yeah, it's been really great. Every office really helps each other. So admissions is actually helping a lot of our career services department right now. We're leading up to our career fair that's taking place in a few weeks. Our current students really help out with our student affairs for different wellness activities. We have a graduate student association that does a lot of programming. So that helps out with our student affairs office. And of course, our alumni are kind of sprinkled throughout. Sometimes they attend our career fairs, depending how far out they are from graduation. A lot of the more recent grads might attend the career fair. We have them help out with admissions, with the application, sometimes the application review. Some of our alum are actually our faculty, adjunct faculty. Mm-hmm. We also have them help out with interviews. A lot of the alums, depending on where they're living, might help out at various events, recruitment events, graduate fairs, conferences. If we do presentations at media outlets, if they're working there, they help kind of get us in the door to meet some of the interns, to meet some of the current working journalists there and talk to them about our various programs. So it really is a collaborative experience, a collaborative office.
That's neat. So you've got your admissions, you've got lots of people working to bring students in. Once they're in, they're working obviously with academic affairs for their curriculum and student affairs for advising, that type of thing. Career services when they're getting ready to graduate, and you're leveraging your alumni for helping to position people not only for jobs, but also for internships, I would assume.
Yes.
So you've got all of these functions working together, dare I say, like they're supposed to.
Right, exactly. I mean, you would think this is a standard kind of structure at many schools. And when our previous dean thought this kind of, actually it was called Assistant Dean of Student Experience back then. And then it changed to, with our new dean, Assistant Dean of Enrollment Management and Student Success. But yeah, I think this structure works really well. I mean, we are a very small school. I know at many other schools, it might include a financial aid office or a registrar office, but some of those services are handled for us at a different school because we are so small. And so we're really able to just focus on that student experience, which has been great. I get to see them, as I mentioned, from the beginning all the way through, and they kind of have this one contact throughout their time at the school and then beyond.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk just a little bit about these shared services, because this is a new model for higher education. Smaller schools such as yourself have to do this or the cost will be prohibitive, especially with, the limited number of students. But the shared services model is critical for many small institutions. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah. So when we started, our school will just be coming up on its 20th anniversary actually next year. So we opened in 2006. And so we were just a very small school. I think our first graduating class was 48 students.
Wow.
And so it was just trying to get the doors open and develop, it was kind of journalists running a school. Everyone was a journalist and kind of coming in and now running a school. And I've been there since 2007. So I was there when the first class graduated, which has been great. Been able to see all the different changes. So when we opened, it was just trying to figure out the curriculum and all this, but with such a small footprint in New York City, just 2 floors, we weren't actually able to have a registrar, a bursar, a wellness center, financial aid office. And so we utilized the Graduate Center, which is one of the doctoral granting institutions at CUNY, and they already had all those, and they only deal with master's and doctoral students. And so that was just the most common sense. They're also only about 5 blocks away. So in terms of geography, it wasn't a far walk if a student had to go to the financial aid office or go to something at the wellness center. And that's been really helpful because we can really just focus on our students and not have to have all these other offices. There's an office that deals with that directly, and we can kind of build out other teams and other departments that are more supportive for our students.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a model. It's an organization. They've got 6 colleges and universities underneath them, and the colleges run their own academics, whatnot, but they provide all the back end services, which frees the college to really focus on their mission instead of all the peripheral stuff that goes with that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a great model, and then just from a financial standpoint too, for the institution, obviously the Graduate Center does get some money from us to help do these services. But I feel like, if we had those departments at our school in terms of salary and all the different build out we would have to do to have a bursar window and have a wellness center, schools really do save some money as long as they have a great relationship with their shared services office, which we do. So,
yeah. And so I want to take this in a little bit different direction because of your experience with undergrads there at Savannah. How does the challenges that grad students face, how are they unique and different from that of undergrads? And how do those challenges influence what you're doing from the holistic perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. With undergrad, my experience has been, they come in and one, you're dealing a lot with their parents. So you come in, you're talking to their parents and right. Sometimes helicopter parents, right? We've all heard that term before too. So they might be more involved than their actual kid,
As long as they're not doing their coursework.
Right. As long as they're not doing that. So from the beginning, you're dealing a lot with the parents. They're asking about safety. They're asking about the curriculum. And the students, I've actually had the question, like, are you a party school? So from the students, it's a different kind of question, right? How's the campus life there? What kind of clubs do you have? Things like that. How's the city of Savannah and things like that? So it's a little bit of a different priorities, I would say, going on as an undergrad. And sometimes they're not really sure about what they want to do coming into a school. They might start off, at least for Savannah, they might start off in architecture or photography and end up graduating in a completely different department or program. With graduate students, they are very focused, so they're coming in and they're very focused with what they want to do. They're getting their master's degree. They know they want to focus on journalism. They might not know exactly which medium. Do they want to focus as a broadcast reporter? Do they want to focus on data journalism, investigative? But they can figure that out. But they do know it's journalism, and the foundation of that is writing, reporting, fact checking, things like that. And so the different priorities for them are really career outcomes, building their network. The location of the school is very important, especially for journalism. We are in the media capital of the world. So Times Square, we're right next door to the New York Times. We're very short distance to many other outlets. And so the location is very important for the students as well. But I would say they're much more focused on how will this program get me a job? How will doing this program prepare me more than me just doing this on my own? And so we talk to them about what our program can help you do versus trying to do this on your own, ad hoc, taking courses here and there. We've had students that have come in with zero journalism background, and when they graduate, they're actually working at the New York Times. So we tell students those stories. Can you work at the New York Times in a year and a half or 2 years on your own? Or does it help to come to grad school to learn the skills that the New York Times is looking for, meet the faculty that are also working at the New York Times, build out that network, and you can get there faster through a graduate program.
Sure. So that is key as part of the enrollment or the admissions process. Talk to me a little bit about the student services, which is the other areas of student affairs under you.
Yeah. So with our students, our graduate students, they come in, and like I said, because they are full-time in the program and we are living in a very expensive city, finances are a big issue. And so we have developed, actually this happened right before COVID or right after COVID. We developed a food pantry. There's food insecurity with students, especially graduate students, and in an expensive city. So we've developed a food pantry. We've definitely, since COVID, have increased several wellness events that we have on campus. We also have a lot of professional events, journalism related events. But if we don't offer these kind of stress relieving events, like we have pet therapy, we've had DIY aromatherapy where you create your own aroma balls, with essential oils. We'll have massage chairs. We'll have massage therapists come in and do massages for 30-minute windows. Students can sign up. We'll have mocktail, paint and sip. And so if we don't actually create these kind of wellness events, sometimes students will not take care of their mental health, take care of their wellness, take a little time out. And so we've had to kind of create those spaces for them at our campus just to make it accessible to them. Our students live in all different boroughs. Some students live in Jersey, some live in Connecticut even, and take the train in. And so there's one place that they can kind of all get together and do this. They're at the school all the time. And if we have these spread throughout different times throughout the day, it allows them the opportunity to do so. Versus undergrads, I think it's a longer program. It's 4 years or more. And so they have a lot more opportunity to kind of figure out what courses they want to do. And there's a lot more kind of, I would say, activities built into undergrad versus graduate students, shorter program, very focused. Some come in with families. And so we have to kind of create very specific type of professional and more kind of stress relieving events around their classes and program for them to participate in.
Yeah. And how about building a cohort? You're bringing in a small group of students. They attract and they work with each other as part of the cohort. From an undergrad experience, that's done many times through Greek life or clubs or whatnot. How does it make it easier, or does it make it easier for that type of thing?
Yeah, we do a lot around creating a community with the incoming class. We also, because our program is a 3-semester program, we have the graduating class that's there in their 3rd semester, also the incoming class. So they do get a chance to kind of mingle 1st semester and 3rd semester before they graduate. And so that's been great because the 3rd semester students just finished their required internship in the summer. So they participate in a lot of the career services events in the fall, talking about internships, where they've interned, they've shared their experiences. And then the graduating class and the incoming class get to know each other and kind of can share experiences. Incoming class is very scared about different classes or things. And the 3rd semester can kind of say, I've been there already. I understand it. This is how I did it. These are my tips or my, little secrets on how I got through it. We also have, just like undergrad, actually, a lot of associations. So we have clubs. We have a lot of journalism specific associations. We have student chapters for various journalism associations like the Investigative Reporters and Editors Association, which is IRE. We have a student chapter for that. A lot of the journalists of color organizations, we have chapters, National Association of Black Journalists, Hispanic journalists, Asian American journalists. And so we have a lot of those chapters. So through those little groups as well, they kind of create their cohort. And then also just for international students, with everything going on, we've created an international student task force that has a lot of our student-facing departments in it, and they will speak with alumni who are international alum. They were an international student in our program, and then they graduate. And we have a few recent graduates that participate in that, where we can make sure that we're covering and trying to sort through any issues for international students. And we always have check-ins and things like that. So we do try to create a pretty tight community at our school. On the administrative side, we build it, but also through the students themselves, they kind of create that community in a very short time too.
Yeah. And I want to challenge my listeners because many folks will say, hey, this doesn't apply to me. Step back and look at the overall concept, how these departments and the students are all involved with their own experience. And that leads me directly into the alumni connection. You've got your third semester folks working with your incoming freshmen, and the third semester folks, when they were first term, their third term are now out in industry. You've also got an incredible connection with other alumni to build that network, and you can leverage that potentially for a new job.
Yes, definitely. A lot of our students, when they graduate, some of them have worked at their internship actually that they had that summer. And so they were offered a job and they'll say, well, I just need to finish one more semester. Can I wait till January? And a lot of them will say yes, or they might freelance for them in the third semester. And so it's great for our incoming students to see that and say, oh, wow, now I'll know someone that's working at ProPublica or someone that's working at NPR or the Times or wherever they may work. And so, yeah, our alumni board is very active. We have a very active alumni board from a wide range of classes. Some of the alumni board members are from 2010, but others are just from 23 or 24. And so really, it's really good to have that perspective because the ones from 2010 are kind of now 15 years into their career. But then we have some more recent alums that are kind of just starting out in their career. And so it's really good to have both perspectives from alumni. And they're involved with our homecoming. We have quarterly meetings with the dean. They're just really active. And that's been really great too. They try to reach out to alum. Part of their expectations is actually to participate on various committees at the school, whether it's strategic planning committee, campus life committee, anything like that. They actually participate in those monthly meetings. So they're really active and really helpful to our school.
One of the benefits of going to Harvard Business School, HBS, is the networking that you get there, or Stanford. You've got top people going into Silicon Valley or throughout industry, whatnot, the ability to network with alumni, to be able to say, hey, I'm from CUNY School of Journalism, or I'm from HBS, or et cetera. Right there is its own, quote, badge of honor to where you've almost already got a great network to help you with your job search or your future career.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons students come in is to build the network, whether it's through expanding their network through faculty or through our alumni. So we are a pretty young school. We only have about 1,500 alum. But what's great about being a young school, as I said, is our alumni are really invested in the program and in the various programs and in our school. And so I could reach out, or our director of alumni affairs could reach out to at least probably 10 to 20 people in every single class and say, can you talk to this student? And they were more than willing to do so. And so I do that all the time. Our director of alumni affairs does that. We'll have various job postings for our alums that we do through our alumni newsletter. And they'll always say, hey, we have a job opening at my media outlet. Feel free to share my email with any alums that want to talk about working here or what this position looks like before they apply. And so we have that all the time. So they're really invested in the program and the outcomes of our students. And it's really great for just a small school, only been around 20 years. There's a lot of alumni kind of like bonding, and they have different events that they do on their own and get together. We always joke that, a lot of, they say at the law schools, look left and right, one out of three will make it. At our school, it's like, look left and right. The person next to you could be your boss in a few years. So don't look at it as a competition, where you have to get that story, you have to publish. Look at it as building your network and creating these bridges with your students, because you never know, that person could be your boss in a few years. And it's actually happened several times where they're like, oh my gosh, one of my classmates is now my supervisor.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, I really dissed them on that one paper.
Right, exactly. I didn't like that article, and now they're my boss. Now I love every article.
Yeah, you just made that up. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Yeah. So we're coming up to the end of our time, but there was one other thing I wanted to mention. International students, the numbers are starting to decrease. What do you see as the trends going forward? And are the things that we need to be thinking about right now when it comes to enrolling international students?
Yeah, definitely. Our numbers also have decreased a little bit, but it's not because they don't want to come. It's actually because a lot going on with the current administration. They actually were not able to get visas. And so
Mm.
only for international students do we defer admission for 1 year in hopes that they'll be able to try to get that visa next year. And so for us, we are a journalism program. So we do have a bilingual Spanish program. So it's both in English and Spanish, the program. And we're actually launching an online program and in the spring, our very first online program, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
But, we don't actively really recruit international students. They find us organically through search, through our digital advertising, digital marketing. But because we have a very high TOEFL score or IELTS score, because you have to be able to write pretty strongly in English and also have a really high speaking in English as well. We don't actively recruit, I would say, outside of maybe Canada. We do a couple things in Montreal or Toronto. So we don't really have a huge number of international students. Some other journalism schools do. They do have most of their population is actually international students. And so this new administration and a lot of things going on with international students has really affected them. Because ours hasn't been that big, maybe 10 to 12% of our incoming class, it hasn't affected us too much, but we have seen a decrease because of students not being able to get their visas. So as I mentioned earlier, the International Student Task Force, that just started within the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, because we were seeing a lot more students that were just having issues with either, once they're here, because we have a publishing requirement at the school, they have to do the CPT form all the time, which is the curricular practical training. And so we've had to talk to them about how to submit those forms and how to, you have to do it for every single article that you submit. And so how do you do that? What's the process for that? And we started creating these international student check-ins every few months just to kind of see. We just had one last week for our incoming students, our new students, and we'll probably touch base again with our third semester students. And so just being a little bit more proactive with international students. Obviously, we're limited in what we can do because of federal laws, but we want to make sure that we understand completely how our international students can succeed and be able to answer those questions for them as much as we can. We do have an international students office, and that is one of our shared services, which is at the Graduate Center. And so they're really helpful too. They come to our orientation and do an entire presentation. And because we are a very small school, they really get to know our students, and they know, okay, they only have 12 students. Let's really understand each of their circumstances as best as we can to try to help them. And so just being more proactive and sharing information and sharing the process and just doing check-ins. They just appreciate check-ins and making sure that, they're not forgotten, and that's been really great. And I'm really, really excited that we started that task force just in the last year and a half or so.
One last question before we wrap up. You just gave me a new line of inquiry. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
You've got some incredible holistic programs that are working together. You're starting online. How are you going to be able to get to build these cohorts, to be able to offer these same services in a meaningful way to online students? And is it all going to be full-time online, or is it going to be part-time?
Yeah, these are great questions. Yeah, this is our first kind of foray into online. This is kind of a pilot program. And if it goes well, this is the way that we will try to increase enrollment and try to increase access to some of our programs. Because, like I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to just pick up and move to New York City and be in a full-time program. And so this is an online bilingual program. It's a different type of curriculum compared to our on-campus programs. We don't want to kind of cannibalize our on-campus program where everyone now does online, right? And so it's a different kind of program. It's focused for journalists already working in the field versus our on-campus program has a little bit more students that might not have any journalism experience. This is a little bit more for that mid-career journalist looking to expand their skills. And also it's very small. We're only looking for maybe 10 students to start. It is asynchronous, 100% asynchronous. We do have some professional development certificate programs that have low residency where you come into the school maybe 3 times throughout the program. We don't have that option at all. It's completely online, and it is open to domestic students, but a lot of the audience we were thinking is actually more for Latin America students. And so we are thinking about those. Actually, it starts in the spring. And so we're like kind of knee deep in how do we create these cohorts? How do we create that community? So, one thing that came out of COVID was the option to do virtual events. And so we were trying to build out a lot of virtual events specifically for online students, but of course open to on campus, but very different time frames, different kind of focus of what the programs we offer. We're going to probably try to do like any kind of wellness things. We might have a virtual option for them to participate. Now, not to say there are plenty of students that we're seeing from the tri-state area that are actually interested in an online program. And so for those students, they're more than welcome. If you want to come to the campus, they can come to the campus for an event or maybe plan out a trip where they see a couple events taking place in a week. If they want to come and visit the campus and participate, they're more than welcome to have that access as well. But we are starting to think, how do we, as you mentioned, create that cohort, create that community. So again, they're not the forgotten students. They're online, they're doing their own thing. We want to make sure that they leave as a very satisfied student, have a very satisfied time at the school, and then of course be a really engaged alum and be able to kind of give back in that way once they graduate.
Well, this is all fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think there's some great ideas and opportunities for other institutions to bring these functions together to make sure that the student experience is what they should get instead of what it is they just need to get. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on.
As we always do, our two final questions. 3 takeaways for college presidents and boards. What do they need to be thinking about, like what you guys are doing with the overall student experience?
Yeah, great end of the podcast question, I think, for everyone to kind of listen and hear what other schools are giving as their takeaways. One thing I would say is that student success should really be an institutional ecosystem, not just one department. And so too often, the enrollment affairs, student affairs, career services, all those departments kind of operate in silos. And so specifically for graduate students, their needs might be different than undergrad. And so they have a lot of financial needs or a lot of personal needs. And so it doesn't really fit into one office. So if schools can kind of break down those barriers, kind of build more integrated student success ecosystems, and again, guide them from recruitment all the way to graduation and beyond, I think that could really champion a lot of different structures and really connect a lot of student-facing touch points into one kind of cohesive institution. Another thing I would probably say is just, data, right? Data informed, equity driven strategy is like a non-negotiable. So like you mentioned, the enrollment cliff, financial strains, different things that require leaders to make decisions should always be grounded in data and mission. What's that saying? If you don't have data, it's an opinion. And so, really using analytics to anticipate what is the kind of student that thrives here? Who's the kind of student that struggles? And trying to aligning it with all those different offices, admissions, financial aid. They really should just look at their policies, I would say presidents and deans, and just say, how do our policies expand access and opportunity and not just kind of focusing on managing on the numbers, And so I would say data-informed decision-making, equity-driven strategy is really a non-negotiable, I would say. And then the final thing I would say is really just, I guess, empathetic leadership. So especially for our students, graduate students, they face a lot of stress, unprecedented stress. And so if you can kind of lead with empathy and you just listen to students, that's really a lot of times what they want, is just to be listened to feel like they're not forgotten, prioritize their well-being, and try to create the culture of belonging. I think that really helps with impacting retention and student outcomes. And I really think humanizing that leadership not only helps support student success, but it also strengthens, I think, the school. It strengthens the enrollment. And I really think it strengthens the alumni loyalty, and they'll want to give back to the school after they graduate. So that would probably be the third thing I would recommend.
Those are great recommendations. And I always try and remind presidents, alumni doesn't mean they're only there for them to open their wallets. They're there for a whole host of functions, which will ultimately end up having them open their wallets.
Definitely. I totally agree.
So what's next for you?
Well, a lot of things going on at the school. Actually, we have launched a free tuition campaign. So knock on wood that it happens, but we would be the first master's in journalism in the country to offer free tuition. The goal is by 2028, that incoming class in the fall would be the first class to be completely free tuition. And so our dean is really busy at fundraising, and we have a lot of our alumni actively giving us testimonials and different things about their experience so we can kind of try to get funders interested in our school. And so that's really the big thing on the horizon. And what would that look like once we have that? We're starting to have various committees and meetings around free tuition. How do things change admissions wise, and then student affairs, career services, and alumni wise once we become free tuition? There's a lot to kind of think about. So that's our next thing on the horizon.
Wow, that's an incredible BHAG.
Yes, definitely.
So I certainly hope it all works out for you.
Colleen,
thank you so much for being on the program. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Thank you so much, Drumm. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening today, and a special thank you to my guest, Dr. Colleen Leigh. Colleen, it was wonderful having you on the program. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I learned so much about what you guys are doing. Thank you. To my listeners, thanks again for being on the show. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.